Welcome to Wife Secrets channel. We hope you will have fun with us. Enjoy watching. I can already hear the judgment coming my way, and maybe you're right to think that. But let's be real, life can get pretty chaotic sometimes. So here's the story of how my husband caught me in a rather compromising situation involving a horse and a guy named Jacob. Last summer, my husband Archie and I made the decision to welcome a gorgeous horse named Arthur into our lives. Archie had a deep-rooted passion for horses from his childhood and wanted to share that love with our kids. Being a family-oriented couple, we thought Arthur would be a wonderful addition to our little crew, living in a small town where everyone knows each other. Secrets are hard to keep, and our lives are usually pretty predictable and stable. One of those familiar faces in our community was Jacob, a guy I'd known since high school. We would occasionally bump into each other, exchanging friendly hello and smiles. Jacob was well regarded in town for his affinity for animals and his impressive skills with horses. Before long, he started dropping by to help me take care of Arthur whenever Archie was tied up with other commitments. At first, I didn't think much of it. Jacob's expertise was a huge asset since he had grown up on a ranch, and the bond he formed with Arthur was something special. I found myself genuinely thankful for his assistance. I would spend countless hours chatting with him in the barn where he patiently taught me the ropes of handling Arthur. It felt so innocent, just three old friends reconnecting and bonding over our shared passion for horses. What could possibly be wrong with that? But as the days turned into weeks, our conversations took on a deeper tone. Jacob began to open up about his past, sharing tales of the life he had lived, the aspirations he had pursued, and the ones he had let slip away. I found myself revealing things to him that I had never shared with anyone else, not even with Archie. There was something about being around him that felt both comforting and exhilarating. We would chuckle over the smallest things and reminisce about our high school adventures, and before I knew it, I was eagerly anticipating his visits. One day while we were cleaning Arthur's stable together, our hands accidentally brushed. As we reached for the same tool, it sounds trivial, but in that moment there was an undeniable spark. A rush of excitement that I hadn't experienced in years. I tried to dismiss it, convincing myself that I was just overanalyzing the situation and letting my imagination get the best of me. However, when he came by next, the tension between us was impossible to ignore. It felt like an invisible boundary had been crossed, and I was at a loss for how to retreat. My love for Archie remained strong, but my feelings for Jacob were becoming increasingly complicated. I knew I was navigating treacherous waters, yet I couldn't help but feel more alive in his presence. The reality was that my marriage had settled into a comfortable routine where the passion we once had dimmed significantly. Life had really taken over with kids and responsibilities consuming most of our time. But being with Jacob felt like unearthing a part of myself I hadn't seen in ages. It all unfolded gradually through subtle glances and lingering smiles. Those moments when we found ourselves standing just a bit too close, laughing a little too hard at each other's jokes. There was nothing overtly physical about it, but the emotions were so intense that they felt almost tangible, like a secret. We were both keeping one rainy afternoon while we were hiding from the downpour in the stable. Jacob brushed his hand against my shoulder, and I didn't pull away. We stood there in silence, listening to the rain drumming on the roof, both of us grappling with the feelings swirling around us. I knew I was flirting with danger, but I couldn't help myself. Then came the day that shifted everything. Archie had been working late and had planned a surprise weekend getaway for just the three of us, a chance to reconnect, and I was excited to escape the emotional turmoil that had been brewing. But on the day we were supposed to leave, Archie had to make an unexpected workshop which delayed our departure. Frustrated yet understanding, I decided to kill time in the stable with Arthur. It was a rainy day and I was dressed in shorts and a short top. When I arrived, I found Jacob already there brushing Arthur's coat. Our eyes locked, and in that moment we shared a silent understanding that didn't require any words. I felt the weight of every decision I had made leading up to that moment. Every choice that had brought me to standing in that stable with him for a fleeting second. I questioned my sanity, wondering how a simple friendship had morphed into something so intricate and charged. I stepped closer to Arthur, my hands gliding over his back as I stood next to Jacob, completely oblivious to the strange tension brewing between them. As I bent down to grab the brush, Arthur suddenly lunged at me, hitting me from behind. I tried to rise with Jacob's help, but instead of assisting, he seemed to revel in my predicament. I can't go into all the details due to YouTube's rules, and honestly, I felt a wave of shame wash over me for even sharing this. That day, Arthur and Jacob took full advantage of me. I was in pain, yet there was a strange thrill in it too. I couldn't entirely fault Arthur for his wild behavior, since he was just being himself. But Jacob crossed a line that day. Just then, Archie walked into the stable, having left work early to surprise me for our getaway, and he stumbled upon the worst possible moment. The look on his face was a mix of disbelief, hurt, and anger. And he didn't need to say anything. The tension in the air was thick, with unmasked questions. My heart sank as I saw the betrayal etched on his features. Jacob quickly backed away, mumbling an excuse before disappearing, leaving just Archie and me in that stable, surrounded by the aftermath of what I had almost allowed to happen. The silence that followed was almost suffocating, and I felt completely exposed, as if all my hidden feelings and secrets were laid bare. Archie stood there, frozen, staring at me with a blend of confusion, hurt, and a sharp glimmer of anger that pierced right through me. My heart raced as I struggled to find the right words, but nothing came to mind. I wanted to explain everything to somehow undo all the events that had led us to this moment. But deep down I knew that was a lost cause. Sophia. He finally spoke, his tone low and cautious. The weight of his words lingered in the air, and I realized this was not a question that could be easily answered. Tears threatened to spill, but I held them back, determined not to crumble in front of him. Not just yet. Archie. It's not what you think, I began, but even as I said it, I could hear how empty those words sounded. I could see the disbelief in his eyes, and honestly, could I blame him? My feelings for Jacob were unvoiced, but undeniably real. And as much as I wanted to convince him it was just a simple friendship, I knew that wasn't the whole truth. Archie took a deep breath and turned away as if trying to rein in the turmoil brewing inside him. When he finally met my gaze again, he shook his head in disappointment. I trusted you, Sophia. We've built a life together and I thought I knew you. But seeing you with him and Arthur like that, you have no idea how that felt. His words hit me like a ton of bricks, and the guilt crashed over me heavier than I ever anticipated. I loved Archie. I really did, but somehow I had allowed my heart to stray, getting tangled up in feelings for someone else. I couldn't even trace back when it all began, but it was undeniable now. Archie. Please listen, I managed to say, my voice barely a whisper, as if the weight of my confession was too much to bear. I never intended for any of this to spiral out of control. It was all just a series of unfortunate events. I never meant for things to get this complicated, I said. But he looked at me with disbelief, his eyes narrowing in frustration. Sophia, I'm your husband. I'm the one who should understand you. Yet you've let some guy and a horse get closer to you than I have in ages. Do you even grasp how that makes me feel? Hearing those words struck a chord, making me realize just how much I had taken him for granted. Over the years, we had fallen into a monotonous routine so focused on the day-to-day that we neglected the essence of our relationship. The deep conversations that once brought us together had faded, and I found myself confiding in Jacob instead, sharing pieces of my heart that should have been reserved for Archie. I know I messed up, I admitted, my voice trembling. I should have come to you instead of letting someone else fill that void. I didn't even recognize how lonely I was until it was too late. He fell silent for a moment, and I could see the wheels turning in his mind as he tried to make sense of everything. He finally let out a deep sigh, his shoulders drooping as if the burden of everything had finally hit him all at once. I need some time to think, Sophia, he said, his tone softer than it had been in a while. I need to figure out if I can trust you again, and if we can rebuild what we once had. I don't want to throw it all away. But right now I just don't know. Hearing those words stung, but I understood he was right. Trust is fragile and can't just be repaired with a quick fix. It requires time, patience, and a lot of effort. If I wanted to salvage our marriage, I knew I had to show him that he was the only one I truly wanted by my side. In the days that followed, the atmosphere between us was thick with tension. We went through our daily routines, both of us trying to maintain a semblance of normalcy for the kids. But there was an undeniable barrier between us. I could see the pain in his eyes, and it broke my heart all over again. As for Jacob, I cut off all communication with him. I realized that was the only way to start mending things with Archie. I steered clear of places where I might run into Jacob, and ignored all his attempts to reach out. Part of me longed to explain things, to say a proper goodbye. But I knew that even a single conversation could reopen the wounds we were desperately trying to heal. One evening, as I was winding down for the night, Archie entered the room and settled himself on the edge of the bed, his hands tightly clasped together. It was clear he was grappling with something heavy, so I chose to give him the time he needed to gather his thoughts. Sophia, he began, taking a deep breath that seemed to carry the weight of his worries. He shared that he had been reflecting on our relationship, on the events that had transpired, and on the path forward for us. My heart raced, bracing for the worst. But then he reached for my hand, his touch warm and reassuring. "I still love you," he said, locking eyes with me. "I don't want to lose what we've built, but I need to know you're all in that. You won't seek comfort elsewhere." When things get tough, a wave of relief washed over me, and I felt tears welling up with a shaky voice. I assured him, "I am Archie, I want this, I want us, and I promise I'll never take you for granted again. I'm committed to doing whatever it takes to mend our relationship." Over the following months, we dedicated ourselves to our marriage, attending, counseling, and opening up in ways we hadn't in years. It was a challenging journey, and there were moments when it felt like we were stuck. But slowly the barriers between us began to crumble. In hindsight, I realized that this difficult period had pushed us to face the issues we had long avoided, ultimately bringing us closer than we had been in a long time. Our marriage isn't flawless. It definitely comes with its own set of hurdles, and we both put in the effort every single day. But when I glance at Archie now, I see the man I originally fell for, and I can tell he sees me in the same light as for Jacob. He eventually moved away, and I haven't heard a peep from him since. Honestly, I'm perfectly fine with that. We both understood that the bond we shared was just a fleeting escape from reality, born out of a moment of vulnerability. And that's all it ever was, an escape that almost cost me everything I cherished. So that's my story. I'm not particularly proud of what transpired, but I hope that by sharing it, someone else might reconsider before drifting away from their loved ones. Sometimes it only takes one moment to lose everything that truly matters. Dear friends, don't forget to subscribe to the channel, like, and leave a comments.